on a Monday you'd be looking at the tournaments that are coming up for the week. You'd have a look at who's been playing well, who likes playing on these courses, and then you just try and go through every single player in the field and put a price on every player in the tournament. And then kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, you're looking at adjusting prices based on the money that's coming in, so who the smart people are betting on, how much money has been staked in general on these players. And then Thursday through to Sunday, you're just adjusting the odds and running and until the end when the tournament's over.
Right. And I mean, you say the course is obviously a big factor in terms of who is going to contend there. Would it be specific course form or would it be type of course?
Yeah, so originally when I started, it would have been very course specific. So I think that's kind of how the industry has changed in the last few years, where it's more, can the player play this style of golf course? But back then, like when I started, it definitely was more the actual specific golf course. And I think I was questioning, why do we look at it this way? I think the industry has moved towards a style, but that's obviously helped with the advent of new statistics like the strokes gained stuff.
Yeah, you find the strokes gained paints a really clear picture of what happens?
Yeah, it definitely gives you an idea of like what you can do in a given week. So like, can you gain shots off the tee? Can you gain shots with your irons? Like, is it going to be a week where you just need a hot putter to win? Things like that.
Interesting that you mentioned putting, because I had a conversation with you before about how a lot of people do see putting as the real separator. Like, people might watch a golf tournament, whether it be an amateur tournament that they're at or whether they watch the US Open on TV and say, the guy that putted the best wins. And I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like a lot of weeks it will be the putting that actually separates it, but that's not to say that putting is the most important thing over the course of a season. So you're going to need to gain 6 to 10 shots on the green to win a golf tournament, but that's just not going to happen over the course of a season. There's so much variance in putting that, a really good season, you might have someone gain one stroke per round over the field, and that
would be exceptional, would it? One stroke per round.
Yeah, even 1 to 1.5, like Jason Day would be in that sort of bracket. But so like an average putting performance is never really going to win you a golf tournament. Like, whereas Rory's average driving performance is just so much above what everyone else is doing that puts him on such a good footing for winning tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Day tends to lead putting stats. Is that right?
Yeah.
And in terms of style, when I think of Jason Day, I think of athlete, I think of power, the driver. But actually, is the strength of his game putting?
Yeah, definitely putting. Yeah, but he is long enough off the tee, so he does have his weeks. But his irons are particularly poor relative to the rest of his game. I think that's what's probably held him back from winning more majors, really.
And then you mentioned McIlroy. I mean, he appears to be quite wasteful because of the driving, I guess. Like, he's putting himself in such a position that if he puts averagely, it just looks terrible. And you've mentioned before his short irons.
Yeah, his short irons is definitely an area where he's needed to improve. But I think he has addressed that in the last couple of years. Like, I think he's become far more consistent, probably because he has been aware of his deficiencies, and he has gone after the short irons and the putting as areas that he's needed to improve on.
Rory aside, I mean, across the tour, what would you be looking for to predict somebody to have a long career?
Probably the best predictor of success would be irons. So strokes gained approaches, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As opposed to, I thought you were going to say greens and regulation.
Yeah, well, I suppose greens and regulation probably doesn't give you as accurate a reflection, because guys who are hitting it to 2-3 feet, where the probability of success from that range is 100%.
Like, are there a lot of shots hit to 2 and 3 feet though?
Yeah, there actually are. Yeah.
Like, if someone shoots 63 on a Saturday on the PGA Tour,
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends. Sometimes there are, and then sometimes there are these freak strokes gain putting rounds where guys might gain 6 strokes, and like on the greens. But
Sure.
the thing about doing it on the greens is it's not going to correlate well the next day. If you gain 6 strokes on the greens on a Saturday, like there's no correlation on Sunday with that. There's a much bigger correlation with your overall ability for the last year on the greens.
So putting, you're looking at a large sample size really to have any kind of prediction for the next day's
Exactly.
play, or yeah.
Yeah. Whereas with the approaches, if a guy is knocking down flags on a Saturday, there's a good chance, as long as he's mentally in a good place, he'll be able to do the same.
And it's funny you mentioned mentally. I've often wondered, like, the analytics are so. I mean, everything is analyzed with such a fine tooth comb. Is there any measurement for them being mentally in a good place, or is that taken into account at all for you guys, or is it purely just where has their ball been hit from A to B?
We do obviously look at players, and we kind of make pretty strong inferences based on very little data, but about guys' abilities under pressure. Because in general, guys don't get into contention very often, and like, they might get labelled a bottler from 1 or 2 bad performances. I'd have a few golfers on my list of who I'd call bottlers.
Okay,
Like,
we're gonna need to hear about those. So let's go the bottler list.
yeah, well, I suppose Rafael Cabrera Bello would be probably my number one on the list. He, like the Irish Open in Lahinch last year was a prime example where he got to the front, looked like he was going to cruise the tournament, and just started to hemorrhage shots, like duffed it into the bunker on 11 from front to the green, and just completely faded away.
Okay.
Charles Howell is another guy, and he's even openly admitted like that he doesn't actually like the feeling of being in contention.
Wow.
He doesn't like his hands getting clammy, his chest gets tight, things like that. It doesn't feel comfortable, and he's openly admitted that. But he's made over $1 million in the PGA Tour every year for the last 20 years, so I think he's doing all right for himself.
It's kind of nice, actually. It's refreshing to hear that the traders actually do make decisions based on kind of your gut feeling of, it doesn't sound like he's too confident, or did work out, vice versa. I presume there's guys that are more likely to get the job done.
Guys like Jon Rahm, who I wouldn't consider to be a bottler, but I just think he's no off switch. So like he if Jon Rahm gets 4, 5, 6 shots ahead, he's going to keep playing like Jon Rahm plays. Not like whereas when Tiger used to get like that, he'd kind of go ultra defensive, and he'd play a very controlled game and let everyone come and chase him down, and nobody was good enough to do it. Whereas I think Jon Rahm, there's always the possibilities of double bogeys the way he plays golf.
I wouldn't really call that a mental flaw. Is it just more an aggressive style?
Exactly, it's a really aggressive style, and it's why like he's never out of a golf tournament either. Well, I suppose a few obvious ones like Lee Westwood and Justin Rose as well.
Well, I know Lee Westwood was in position to win a lot of majors in his time and never won any, but I mean, a bottler, really?
Yeah, I know he's won a lot of European Tour events and stuff, but he's certainly it feels like he should have 2 or 3 majors tucked away at this stage.
He's the forgotten third place finisher of Tiger's 2008 US Open.
That was a particular highlight of mine when he's when you look at the footage of the 2008 US Open and you see Tiger's putt on 18 versus Lee Westwood's putt on 18, like absolute fucking cheese. Like Tiger took the right amount of time. It's like everything in that routine was about holding that putt, and like you just knew he was going to hold it. Whereas Westwood almost felt a bit rushed, and I think he missed a putt low and short almost.
If we're talking about Lee Westwood's worst final green moments, for me, it had to be British Open. Was that 09 or 08?
That was 2009, yeah.
Oh, the year after. Okay, Westwood 3-putted the last.
He did, yeah, but I suppose he didn't know at the time. He thought that he was unlucky in that case because he was pretty confident that Tom Watson was just going to par the last, and he figured he needed the birdie to actually tie Watson.
Okay, I'm going to have to... I disagree with you on very little about golf, but this thing about I had to go for the birdie, Like for a top player, like he knocked it how far by?
I know. No, I don't disagree with that point.
Like, any particular Justin Rose moments come to mind?
People don't really put it down as a big choke, but when Rose lost to Sergio in the Masters, how many years ago was it? Was 2017? That I think that has to go down as one of the biggest chokes that I remember any in the Masters.
Really?
Yeah, he had the tournament was over after 13 holes, and I know Sergio made a good par on the 13th, but Rose was so in control of that tournament, and like on 17 he had a terrible putt, made a terrible bogey, and even on 18 in regulation, like he had the chance to pour it in on top of Sergio on a putt that you've taken a million times and didn't even touch the hole, like misread it somehow.
A bad drive for him, in fairness, is very accurate usually. And a couple more things before you go. Just what are your thoughts? I'm interested. We were talking about, bottling or being able to close things out. One of the most impressive wins we've seen in a long time is Shane Lowry, Royal Portrush. What would your thoughts be on Shane Lowry for the medium to long term? Like, is he going to contest for more majors, or was that more of a one-off in your view?
No, I think he's got the whole game really for all the majors. His short game is just incredible. Like I think he's one of these guys who like just has these really good weeks, and when he's on, he'll compete. And I don't think he's one of these guys who worries too much about what type of week it is, and he's not like afraid of getting into contention in a major. And like he's proved, he's already had 2 4-shot leads now going into 2 different majors and converted one of them, and I think he's going to be up there. He's going to have chances to win 2 or 3 more, I think.